It is now my great pleasure to introduce this year's Sarah and James Bowdoin Day student speaker, Senior Liam Taylor. Liam came to Bowdoin from Connecticut. He is a biology major with a minor in computer sciences. His academic honors are numerous. He is a 3-year Sarah and James Bowdoin Scholar, a 2-year Book Award winner, the 2016 recipient of the James Malcolm Moulton Prize in Biology, and a Goldwater Scholar in Mathematics, Science, and Engineering. He's also been awarded several grants and summer research fellowships in each of the last 3 years. And in addition to his academic pursuits, Liam is co-head of the Huntington Bird Club and a member of the men's ultimate Frisbee team. You need to pick up your socks here, Liam, and get to work. When asked about his favorite experience at Bowdoin, Liam responded that far and away, it was his 2 summers doing ornithological research at the Bowdoin Scientific Station on Kent Island in the Bay of Fundy, where he had the opportunity to live and work with scientists from Bowdoin and other institutions across the U.S. and Canada. The title of Liam's talk this afternoon is Attention and the Life of the Brain. Please join me in welcoming Liam Taylor.
Thank you, President Rose. Thank you all for listening today. Here at Bowdoin, I study biology and computer science. And when you slam those 2 things together, a lot of really interesting stuff pops out. You can think about quantitative models of behavior or the ways proteins fold together. But a lot of what people are really interested in at this interface, a lot of what people are really interested in general, is human thought. I think almost everyone is fascinated by how and why we think our thoughts. I was lucky enough to take a course with Professor Eric Chown on just this topic, on cognitive architecture. This was a computer science course rather than a neuroscience or a psychology course. And because of this, we were focused mainly on the patterns of high-level systems that control the brain. We learned about the ways that humans or other organisms or maybe robots can do things like navigate through a room or recognize objects. These are actually really hard problems to solve. One section of the course was focused on what's called executive control. Most of the behaviors we all have a particular personal fondness for fall under this umbrella. Executive control allows us to solve complicated problems or manage complex social interactions and engage in conscious thought. These are the sorts of things that most people consider eminently human. In the 1980s, psychologists Rachel and Stephen Kaplan at the University of Michigan thought very deeply about executive control and developed what they called attention restoration theory. This is a theory in the scientific sense, so it's a rigorous framework that can be used to explain all sorts of empirical observations. There's a lot to this theory, but I want to start with the most important bit, with the big headline. So here it is in all appropriate jargon. Directed attention is a limited resource. I'll say that one more time. Directed attention is a limited resource. But with nothing to back it, that isn't actually that interesting, so we should break it down a little bit. To start us off, we can think about effortless attention. If a lion starts chasing you, you immediately snap to attention. If the lion keeps chasing you, it's not difficult to continue paying attention. Our fascination with objects and events that impact our survival is automatic and it's virtually limitless. And this is an evolutionary arrangement. It helps us accomplish basic tasks as we try to survive and reproduce. But most of what fills our modern lives, particularly our lives at a place like Bowdoin, are not things like lions or foraging for food. Most of our time is spent listening to lectures and studying deeply abstract concepts. Most of the rest of our time is spent managing our own behavior in front of hundreds of peers as we develop enormously complicated social networks. Learning abstract concepts and self-regulating our social environments are both key elements of executive control. Although humans are great, really great at these kinds of tasks, we can't fall back on the same sorts of automatic evolutionary responses like when we're running away from lions. To control its own behavior at higher levels, our brains need to time these complex mechanisms of inhibition. It's these inhibition mechanisms that allow for our conscious attention. This is what I mean by directed attention. And a big part of the Kaplan's, along with many others' work, was showing that you can only direct your attention for so long. Your regulated focus runs down, and sometimes very quickly. You can consider, as an easy example, how paying attention to a speech about cognitive science right now is taking work. Like any other currency, the neurological resource we use to do this work is finite. So now we have a simple fact. The fact that our ability to learn and our ability to maintain social rely on our finite capacity to stay focused. We can consider a huge number of implications for this fact. We can start to get a better understanding of why college friendships are sometimes really hard. Our courses are a literal trade-off with our social lives. Our capacity for self-regulation in relationships wears down over the course of a semester or over particularly hard stretches of the year or when we're sick. This is not accusatory. And the fact that we're fragile in this way is a lesson to be gentle with ourselves and with the ones we love, especially when things get difficult. We can also think about our academic lives. We can understand why there are some essays we just cannot bring ourselves to write. We can reconsider our struggles during midterms or finals. This may actually be a more important lesson for the faculty in the room. A final exam is not a capstone for the content of our thought. Students are being tested after their resources for directed attention have been run down over the course of a semester. This is real. This is so real. These exams become simple trials to test the depths of our pool of attention. Some faculty may actually perk up at the idea that they can test students at their worst. But to me, the ability to just keep paying attention is not a really interesting trait. Through the structure of our courses, though, it ends up being the reason why most of us get to be here today. So most importantly for today, we can understand why we are in this room and maybe why others are not. Is it because of the pure content of our thought? In some cases, maybe this is true, but what we now know about attention damages this pretty ideal academic image. There are students who have gotten sick or who have family members who are sick. There are students worrying about money. There are female students and LGBT students and students of color who are being burdened by the unique expectations we hoist upon them to constantly think about and discuss and organize discussions of race and gender and sexuality. Research by Steele and Aronson suggests that these groups also face stereotype threat. That is, they have knowledge of negative stereotypes and have to spend effort regulating their behavior in light of these stereotypes. And I'm not just trying to make a vague appeal to issues we all know exist. These people aren't just being robbed of time or energy. Their pool of directed attention, their actual currency of learning and thought is being sapped. At the very least, it becomes harder for them to learn and study and take tests. And that means that there are people who are not in this room who should be in this room. At this point, I'm sounding pretty pessimistic for a couple of really good reasons. But remember that this is attention restoration theory, which suggests a more positive outlook. Rachel and Stephen Kaplan were more interested in healing our bank of directed attention. And it's actually very easy. By our modern, almost capitalist sense of intellectual work, it's probably the easiest thing in the world because it doesn't require our mental effort. Our bodies are built to behave very well in specific natural environments. And as it turns out, more than absolutely anything else, we need time with nature to heal our attention spans. We need soft fascination with trees and grass and clouds. We need to see biodiversity and living landscapes. Natural things draw our attention in automatic, quiet ways, and they allow us to replenish whatever biochemical currency lets us direct our focus. Even relaxed moments in our everyday urban environments don't do the same sorts of good. We need the structure and the slow movement of life. And this means that the natural world is not an arbitrary source of amusement. It's the source of our recurring potential for thought. So we've just gone from directed attention to our social lives, to our academic lives, to the natural world. And this is just to say we've ended up pretty far away from the original headline about directed attention. And I want to make a final point about that transition. We can see how a whole universe of discourse emerges if we allow ourselves to talk at the level of the brain, if we try and consider the material basis of what's going on and follow the implications of actual facts, but we usually don't. Consider for a final moment the intended prompt of the speech sent to students by the event's organizers to, quote, celebrate the life of the mind and academic achievement. We could have talked for hours about the achievements of the mind. Concepts would have slid out of the ether, and as soon as we were done with them, they would have returned there. There would be no mechanism, no function by which we could actually, in reality, understand the process of our thought. So I'd make a plea to everyone here to keep thinking about the life of the brain. We could help ourselves and each other feel better and actually think better. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Liam.